Jay has suddenly begun arriving late to his dates with Audrey. This is odd, but even stranger. He has started to dress nicer and actually fix his hair. Audrey begins to come to her own conclusions, and after he shows up with red lipstick on his forehead, her suspicions are practically confirmed. But is it what it seems? Before we delve further, if you're new to Villain Nation, please remember to subscribe and turn the notifications on so you won't miss out on any of our Descendants videos. Before long, she found herself in the courtyard, and she hurried out towards the gates of the castle, her pure desire to get away keeping her feet moving. She just reached the other side of them when she found she couldn't hardly make herself run any longer. Audrey stepped backward until her back hit the stone of the wall. Audrey closed her eyes as she slid down it. Her eyes shut tightly as she tried to keep away the impending sobs. Audrey wiped at her cheeks as the tears fell in a constant stream, dripping down her face uncontrollably. She tried desperately to think of some way that she could have misinterpreted, but her mind kept coming up blank in the way of answers. She heard him calling from the courtyard. He had actually followed her out, but he no doubt had no idea where to begin looking for her. She didn't bother returning his yells, instead feeling her heart ache even more with the sound of his voice. Audrey sniffled hard, closing her eyes as she tried to figure out why in the world he would ever do this to her. She loved him dearly, dare she say with almost everything that she had? But he obviously didn't care enough about her to even be honest with her. Her body shook as she tried to contain yet another snivel. He was still calling, and she just shook her head, hoping he wouldn't find her there. After a long time, her voice drowned out into nothing as he grew farther away from her. She breathed heavily, trying to get a hold of herself. And as she had time to think, she realized that there was no way that she would know the answer to this problem. But there were 3 people who would. He did what? Evie demanded as she gaped at Audrey from the girl's place on Evie's sofa. Mal was sitting on the other side of the pink princess, looking somewhere between horrified and disbelieving. Carlos was on the opposite couch to theirs with Dude in his lap, and he appeared completely bamboozled at Audrey's most recent admission. Audrey had just come over to Evie's house where she was practically certain Mal would be, and where she was mostly sure that Carlos would be hanging out as well. She knew that the other VKs would know about Jay and his whereabouts much better than she. They always were a tight-knit together family, and they were completely inseparable. Audrey attempted valiantly to keep herself together, but it was very hard with Evie's hand-rubbing comforting, slow circles on her back with that motherly manner that she had about her. Even Mal, with her hand gently on Audrey's knee, was enough to nearly bring the princess to tears. He came into the apartment and he had red lipstick on his forehead. Audrey told her lip trembling a bit as she tried her best to avoid crying on them. Mal shook her head carefully, locking her gaze with Evie as she tried to think of anyone that he could be going out with. Evie gazed at Mal in return, wrapping a comforting arm around Audrey. Wow, I never thought Jay would ever do anything like that to you, Carlos pointed out, and Audrey bit at her bottom lip a bit as she took in his words. You 2 are like spaghetti and meatballs, Dude announced, and Carlos nodded in agreement, scratching the fur on top of the mutt's head fondly. Guys, are we sure Jay even did what we think he did? I know Jay, and I know he's absolutely crazy about you, Audrey. Mal spoke her thoughts aloud as she glanced at the members of their currently assembled group, and Evie just looked down somewhat sadly, stroking Audrey's hair gently. I don't know, Em. Red lipstick on his forehead? That's pretty condemning. Evie expressed regretfully, and Audrey could easily hear in the brunette's voice that she didn't want to believe it was true. But who does he know that wears red lipstick? Mal asked, and Audrey furrowed her brow, shaking her head as she considered Mal's very thought-provoking question. Besides Eve's, there's nobody, and they definitely never do that, Carlos expressed in disgust, sticking his tongue out a bit and wrinkling his nose at the thought. Evie and Mal mirrored his expression at the mere thought of Jay and Evie together like that. Audrey almost wanted to giggle at the lot of them, but her heart was so overtaken by sadness and hurt at this moment that she couldn't quite bring herself to do it. Unless it's Sarah White, Evie pointed out, narrowing her eyes at the very mention of the girl's name. and Mal snorted at Evie, reaching over and patting Evie's cheek affectionately before placing her hand on Audrey's back besides Evie's hand. I'm pretty sure he's not after her. He hates her with a passion, almost as much as you, Audrey, and I do. Mal explained with a slight laugh before quickly sobering as the mood seemed to set back upon her. She sighed slightly, looking down at her feet. Can you guys talk to him, please? Audrey somewhat brokenly requested, and all three of them immediately expressed varying forms of agreement. Of course, Thorn, you know we will, Mal assured her, moving her free hand over and squeezing the princess's hand as she used that nickname reserved especially for Audrey. Audrey just nodded to them, smiling slightly in subdued gratitude. However, before they could get any further into this conversation, the door suddenly opened. Evie, Mal, Carlos, are you guys there? Jay called as he wiped his feet on the mat set before the doorway. Audrey shrank back a bit, feeling Evie's arm slightly tighten around her and Mal's hand crunch Audrey's own in a death grip. Carlos turned around to face the other boy, his arm on the back of the couch. Dude put his front paws on the backrest of the couch as he watched Jay carefully. Jay's eyes widened as he realized that everyone was there and staring at him. He gaped at the lot of them before it finally seemed to dawn upon him that Audrey was sitting there with Evie and Mal and looked like she was barely holding herself together. He immediately looked immensely concerned, and he started to head over to the group. Audrey, I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you okay? Why did you head off and… Sit down, Jay, Evie commanded, her voice lacking its ordinary comforting warmth. Jay's eyes widened as he gaped at the four people and the dog. Dude, in immediate response to Evie's words, obediently sat down. Carlos gently stroked the dog's back as he glared at Jay disapprovingly. What did I do? Jay questioned, and Mal shook her head as she snapped her fingers and pointed to the seat next to Carlos that was across from the three girls. Jay looked at her strangely but complied with her gesture as he went around the edge of the couch and plopped down next to Carlos. Dude stepped over into Carlos's lap, and the DeVille boy petted the dog while watching Jay carefully. Jay looked at the dog and the other boy with some trepidation and ultimately decided to turn his attention to the girls. Do you know why we're all sitting here? Evie questioned, and Jay looked at each of the expressions around him. He furrowed his brow in thought as he bit his bottom lip slightly. You're playing charades, pretending to be the King's Council, and leaving Audrey out of the game? Jay asked uncertainly, glancing between the three girls before settling his gaze upon Carlos questioningly as he wordlessly inquired if he was correct. Nice guess, but no. We quit that after Evie kept cheating and trying to look at the cards. Mal deadpanned, with only a hint of any humor in her voice. And Evie shot Mal a disapproving glance, but Mal just shrugged in response. Evie pursed her lips, but quickly returned her attentions to Jay as she glared quietly. The false accusation aside, Mal's right. We're not playing charades. We're here to talk about what Audrey said you've done to her, Evie told him, and Audrey watched the boy as his expression shifted from uncertainty to pure concern and worry. What happened? What's wrong? I'm Lady Blah Blah, and as always, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this story, feel free to check out another one. And don't forget to put a like, subscribe, and share this video with your villain friends.